sometimes these cars can be infuriating. So in the last video we gave this car a new MAF sensor, and at the end of the video I was pretty happy with the results, to be honest. We went on a nice ride and it pulled nice and hard, above 4,000 RPM. Didn't cut out in the stall, it was running really nice. So a few days after that I decided to drive it down to Church Stretton, and this is what happened. It went then.
Is it losing power?
It's always you, innit? All you got to do, yeah, is restart it.
Has this happened before?
Yeah, and it's fine now. 100% it'll be fine now.
Is it okay now?
Yeah.
It's not okay, is it?
Give it a sec. It's done this before. It's got me home. Don't know what is it? What's going on? What are you? What are you? Film. Get the camera out. Get some content.
Why is it actually doing this though?
Don't know.
Bro, you can't break down like in the middle of a bend.
Do you think it's alright now?
Let me see where we are.
Okay, it's back. So what am I going to do next? Obviously we were looking in the wrong place. The car is doing exactly what it did before. It had a brief period where it was a lot better, but I also experienced that after just cleaning my old MAF sensor. So what's happening is I think the ECU is trying to combat a really lean condition in the car. The reason I think that is because I'm getting one error consistently coming back in the ECU using multi-ECU scan, and that's the lambda sensor integrator value. What it's trying to tell me is it can't carburate the car correctly, so it can't get the right air and fuel mixture. And what I think it's being too lean, because of one of its self-learned parameters. The information I can get on these parameters is so limited, but I think the car is trying to combat an extreme lean condition, which means two things. The car is getting way too much air, or it's getting not enough fuel. One of the most annoying things is I actually went out last night and I set the camera up on my window and I did about 25 miles. And I've actually had, before I changed the MAF sensor, and it was doing this quite regularly, it would do this pretty much every time on this little test route. So I was sure it was going to do it again, and guess what? It drove fine. So, you know, the most annoying thing, when you want a problem to show up, it doesn't. And when you don't want them to show up, they show up. So obviously this is an intermittent issue, the worst ones. It could be something to do with the temperature outside. It's been really hot recently in the UK. I really don't know, but we'll get to the bottom of this. So the first thing I'm going to try is I'm going to test. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to test the fuel pressure getting to the fuel rail. This one doesn't have a valve along the fuel rail, so I'm going to disconnect the fuel hose going into the fuel rail, and we'll connect it in line so we can run the engine and see what kind of fuel pressure we're getting. Oh, how disappointing. So pop that in there. Clamp that back down. Doesn't feel like it's going to come off. Then we can then plumb that bad boy. I want to get a clip down here. Okay, that's plumbed in, and then I'll get my gauge and we'll see how that all looks. Make sure that's on properly. Cool, so I'm going to go pressurize the system and we'll see what that reads. What we got, that folks is not very many PSIs. Just reprimed it again. Okay, that's not too bad now. What's that, 40, 41, 42, that should be about right. Just put you back like that. I'll try priming it a few more times. That's it in now. Yeah, it's gone up a little bit. Okay, we'll start the engine. Sort of 30, 38, 37 PSI. We'll give them a little bit of a rev. See how that changes. I'll try and put this down somewhere where you can see, and then I'll rev it. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to try using my leftover mass airflow sensor cleaner. I'm going to run the engine, I'm going to spray it around all these hoses and just see if anything happens. If we get a change in RPM, we might have an air leak somewhere. I'm still going to take this hose apart and see what happens. So I've got most of this intake tube off. If you pull the tube, you can see there's cracks in it, but I don't think it's leaking from anywhere. One thing I've noticed, and that's my gearbox, and here's the slave cylinder. These connectors, they're just flapping around in here. They're all covered in crap. So I'll tidy those up while I'm here. I've actually got some loom tape, self-amalgamating tape, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to re-tape up all this loom. And make sure that's not going to be a problem ever. I am struggling to get that clip out because, well, look, that's the size of my hand. I have nowhere to get into that. I am 50% sure that idle air control valve is a bit crap. I've got a spare. I might chuck it in, but I know there's a gasket that goes on the top, so I probably want to get hold of a gasket first. And then there's the throttle position sensor at the back. That could be causing some issues, don't know. I've got to think of a way to get that clip off because I'm quite stuck. Grab you. So there's our throttle body. Can I open that a little bit? You tell me what it looks like. I'll give that a clean. How does our intake tube look? Oh, you can't really tell with it on the car. I'll get it off and we'll have a good look at it. So what I've decided I'm going to do, I can't really think of a great, because if you look, right, see if I can get that. There are some cracks in it, but I just don't think they go all the way through. I think they're just, you know, they just kind of go halfway through. And that's about it. So what I want to do, soapy water, I'm going to spray it, wiggle it like this, and just see if anything turns up on the inside. think the answer is no. Let's look at this a bit more closely. No, I think to me that hose is okay. So I'm pretty sure there's no air leaks in the intake. I'm glad I had that pipe off, because the amount of really dodgy electrical connections down underneath that air intake hose is more than what I'm comfortable with. So I'm going to address those. So now the next step is all these sensors are really accessible now, and I've actually got spares of a lot of them. I've got a spare idle motor, I've got spare crank, spare cam, spare knock sensor. And what I'm going to do is I've actually written down the workshop manual spec resistances for all these sensors, even the engine temp sensors and the coolant sensor. I'm going to go test those now while I've got access to them all, to make sure they're all within spec and everything's working good. So let's get to that. So let's do the idle control motor first. A little bit low, 16, let's call that 16. Okay, and 2 and 3, 15 and a half. Or maybe that is 2 and 3. Maybe this is 1 and 2. 18, and what's that meant to be? 17 and a half. Yeah, cool. So that's obviously, yeah, that's 1 and 2, and that's 2 and 3. Cool. So this is fine. This looks like a good one. So let's have this connector off, and we'll do the same with this. So I'll move that so you can see it. So we go for 1 and 3, and that should be about 33 ohms. 32, nice. A little bit lower on this one. 1 and 2, 17 and a half. 2 and 3, 15.2. That is actually even closer than the spare. So I'm going to try the thing. I'm going to try the crank sensor. I think this is it. Is that what I'm holding? Yeah. I'm going to try that next. Ooh, come on. There we go. We'll try that sensor next. So what we're looking for is we are looking for, it says 486 to 594 ohms. It doesn't tell me which pins those are going to be on. So let's just, I don't know, let's go for it. There we go. Okay. So next we'll do the engine temperature sensor, which I believe is this one, and about 2.2 kilo ohm. Oh no, I have run the engine. Yeah. So that's probably about right actually. Yeah, I think that's an issue. Cool. Giving that one a pass. Cool. We'll do the air intake temperature next, because this one is at room temp, about 20 degrees. So yeah, perfect. Right, 2.1 kilo ohms. Perhaps it's a little bit colder. Sorry, a little bit warmer. Nice. I'm going to test the injectors now after working out how to get the connector off. 15.9. Yep, that one's okay. 16, that one's fine. 15.9. That one's spot on. 15.9. So all the injectors are fine. So these two connectors down here, I think one of them goes to a sensor down there. This is one, this is two. Those were just flopping around. I've cleaned the heck out of these two, and now I'm going to try and zip tie these to something that's going to keep them steady. It's probably going to be this big loom here, so I'll do that. I've cleaned the throttle body as best I could. Let me show you. So I'll open it, giving that the best clean. I still suspect this. I think, well, this is part of the reason it's falling into a rough idle, I'm sure, sometimes. Whether it's the cause of my cutting out, I don't know. But so let me zip tie this up. So, checked everything there. All injectors have been checked. I've gone and cleaned the cam and crank sensor. I've considered swapping out that crank sensor for the other one, but I mean, it's so sort of, you've got to put your hand down there around, and I'm sure I'd be able to get it out, but I'm not sure I'd be able to get it in without, like, you know, tearing my hair out. So I'm gonna leave that as a last resort. I've got a spare fuel pump to go into the assembly. I'm reluctant to change that if I don't have to. Tied up the wires down here. Those are zip tied onto the larger loom, so those aren't going to be moving around now every time I depress the clutch. I've rewrapped this little bit of wire, same with this bit. I've got new clips to go on the air intake hoses. Everything's as clean as it can be. I've left the battery disconnected so it will reset all its self-learn parameters. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to put everything back together, we'll just make sure it runs. I'll hook the laptop up and we'll just see what all the parameters are. We'll give it a little rev. We'll see if we can notice something from the data to tell us where to go next. For all I know, just literally cleaning connectors and stuff could have fixed it, but somehow I doubt it. I'm pretty convinced that idle stepper motor is sticking open, because sometimes you lift off the throttle and the car will still feel like it's going, so I think it's leaving that open ever so slightly, which I think could be causing like sort of inconsistent power. I do have a spare one, but I just want a gasket for it, so I'll order a gasket now, and then whenever that turns up I'll switch that out. And what I'm tempted to do as well is actually have the whole throttle body off. I mean, it's quite easy to undo once you've got this this intake hose. 1, 2, 3, 4 screws, and the whole thing comes off, and then you give it a proper clean then. So let me get everything back together, get my laptop, and I'll join you back inside the car. So we're back in the Alfa. I've got all the air hoses on, everything's back together. I think I've connected everything. Battery was disconnected during that whole debacle. It's back on now. All the self-learn parameters will have reset. Got the laptop hooked up. I'll throw the ignition on, and then we'll see what the computer's saying, and we'll run it a little bit, and we'll see where the trims go. See if we can figure out what's going on. Who knows? I may have solved it with just jiggling about a bunch of wires and cleaning them up a little. But let's get to it. We can connect to the thing. Cool. Cool. There we go. So the errors should be nothing. Parameters. Cool. Let's have a look. So I'm going to cut that short. You join me back in the car. I've had a haircut. This is actually about a week later from when I was filming that last little segment. Because I don't want to put any conclusions to the diagnosis of this weird intermittent problem until I've thoroughly tested the car. I want to put a good, couple 100 miles on it. I'll tell you right now that the results are quite interesting, and I actually I've managed to get several sort of 20-mile runs with the computer hooked up to the car, and I've got some really good diagnostic data off it. The car's going to be going to National Alpha Day on Sunday the 7th, so that'll be a really good test for it. So I will be uploading a part 2 to this video because I've just noticed this video is getting really long. So I'm gonna upload a part 2. We'll be changing out that idle air control motor as well in part 2, and we'll see if that makes any difference. We've got loads of interesting footage to come up. I'll be making a video on National Alpha Day as well for the channel. So please subscribe. I really would appreciate it. If anyone's got any helpful comments they want to make about anything you've seen, any ideas you may have, please leave them down below, and don't hesitate to drop a comment if you have any of these problems. I might be able to help you. So drop a like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.